Now, listen, if you haven't heard this, I just think this is fucking like crazy and jaw dropping. The New York Times completely 180-degree misrepresenting what was actually going on in these super important, supposedly incriminating texts. And I know that Blake Lively would have the public believe that she was the victim first of a smear campaign by Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer and Jamie Heath and their PR people. That's just not the case. But Blake Lively picked the wrong target, and she took the wrong course of action, and she made herself the aggressor. And now he's going to fight back. Just because someone is not a perfect guy or he annoys some people doesn't mean that he deserves to have his entire life's work and decades of work and blood, sweat, and tears and all of that he's poured into this career, just have it stopped because an egotistical, overly sensitive actress was not able to deal with some of the more difficult adult dynamics on set. And I'm not even talking about sex there. I'm talking about egos, clashing creative visions, and so forth. So I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right. She has, in her allegations and in the way that the New York Times that she colluded with has chosen to present them, she has made some significant errors here in judgment and in presentation that I think just takes away any credibility that she might have. There are some huge red flags. So this is the most shocking allegation, I think, jaw-dropping allegation, and I talked about it on Twitter, that Baldoni has now made in his lawsuit against the New York Times, in which he names Blake Lively, is that a conversation between his PR people. There's a conversation that seems to show these two women working for Baldoni. They're talking about like all of this public hate for Blake Lively at the time and all of this criticism and so forth. And they seem to be saying, wow, we did this, or congratulations. And then one of them is saying, well, that's why I'm the best. Now, that's how it was presented, and very incriminating in a way, right? But that's the way it was presented in this. Very nefarious, very hyper manipulative, almost like you can imagine like Dr. Evil, like, whoa. Now, Baldoni has presented another version of these texts, and here's what's important about it, okay? As you may or may not know, there are two main ways of extracting text. Like if you're giving someone a subpoena or someone's turning over their phone and their records to you, there are basically sort of two ways that you can extract those, or that you can also present that information to the viewer. One of them is to extract the actual data, like the actual message that was transmitted from phone to phone, and then to make a retyping of that. Now, the other way of doing this or presenting it is just to actually have what is more or less a kind of a screenshot of the actual conversation. So here's where Baldoni, he presented the same conversation, but in the other way that I'm describing. He shows the conversation as it actually happened in the phone. And this is what's strikingly different. There are several things that were pointed out in his lawsuit that I think are just really damning. One is that the exterior content, the surrounding content of this conversation is not only left out in Lively and the New York Times presentation, but just entirely ignored. And if you look at the context around those immediate snippets of, yeah, that's why I'm the best, and congratulations and good job, what you find, now listen, if you haven't heard this, I just think this is fucking like crazy and jaw-dropping. I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me, but to me, this is, people say, oh, this is not a big deal. It's just, first class, celebrity bullshit and egos and stuff. Well, yeah, I do think there's a lot of that, but there's also the New York Times not only messing up a story, but deliberately, completely 180-degree misrepresenting what was actually going on in these super important, supposedly incriminating texts. This is what, according to Baldoni, and I think it's legit, what's actually going on is there's a whole context immediately around these few lines in which they talk about the fact that they're not doing this. It wasn't them, that it is organic. And they even basically say to each other, like, we really haven't done anything. And wow, aren't we lucky? And isn't it lucky that people just feel this way and that this has just come together and all of this? But like, there's a whole context where then they start making then a joke almost out of this idea that they're doing anything. And so what you see is that those texts where she goes, congratulations, or great job, or that's what I'm paid for, They were jokes. And you know how we also know that they were jokes is because there were emojis. There were emojis that were in the original messages that were left out, how conveniently left out in Blake Lively and the New York Times's version. So you had emojis which connote sarcasm used when these ladies were saying this stuff. Congratulations, good job. Oh yeah, that's why I'm the best. And then these faces connoting that it was an absolute bullshit, satirical statement. Completely the opposite. Completely the opposite. And they left the emojis out, right? And they also changed the order. They literally changed, and Baldoni shows this in his suit, so it will be verified. But he alleges and shows us a representation of what he claims is the original conversation, and the order of certain lines have been changed in a way that makes things look worse. Baldoni's conversation is a complete 180-degree deviation from the way that it was presented originally by Blake Lively in the New York Times. So someone is fucking lying. Someone is fucking lying. And Baldoni does not strike me as someone, who would sue the New York Times for defamation and show up with bullshit texts and stuff. Like I really, the suspicion that I felt and the kind of, this is suspect, this doesn't make sense really about Blake Lively's complaint, but I didn't know. This feels so much more credible. And you might say, oh, feels. Well, I'm just telling you, he comes with a lot of receipts in this. And all of this will have to be sifted through. And I understand that she might have counter arguments or what have you, but this was a really big, possibly damning blow to Blake Lively's case and her image, in the sense that, I mean, if she had haters before, if she had people who thought she was a mean girl or manipulative or conniving or out of touch bitch, I'm not calling her that. I'm just saying, though, that is the image that I know, Blake Lively, you had to suffer with for months and months and months with all this bad media. And you should have let it blow over, and you should have taken all the money and all the prestige that this film's success was going to give you, and you should have moved on. But now you've gotten yourself stuck in the muck and mired in this thing that's going to make you look really bad, and it's going to give all of those people who were already saying bad shit about you and deriding you and even maligning you, there so much more ammunition. And it's not just that one thing either with the text, okay? There are a number of other allegations made by Blake Lively that Baldoni has a almost 180-degree different version of. For instance, Blake Lively in her complaint talked about the fact that there was such an insensitivity on the part of Baldoni and Jamie Heath and others that they would basically barge in to her trailer where she was breastfeeding her kid, barge in unannounced, or even over, I think, her protest to a degree, she said, or her discomfort. And yet Baldoni has a record of a conversation, a text, where she says to him in very casual, completely comfortable language, almost exhibitionary language, I would say, quote, "I'm just pumping in my trailer if you want to work out our lines," unquote. Some people who are defending Blake Lively will say that just because she gives him the go-ahead that one day to come into her trailer while she's breastfeeding doesn't mean that he had license to do it other times, or he didn't overstep the mark, or at times, make a presumptuous or uncomfortable entrance. Yeah, except there is something to the idea of like an attitudinal precedent being set, and people are not mind readers. And this isn't a male-female thing. I'm just saying I run across so many people who expect others to read their minds and moods and temperaments. And if someone, my experience with like friends of mine and mothers who are breastfeeding and so forth, if someone is showing a casual attitude like that, like, come on over, I'm pumping and we can chat, to me, the message that is being sent is that I have no issues with this breastfeeding stuff and you seeing it. In fact, maybe I'm even kind of like, I like to laugh at it, or I'd like to be a feminist and make you watch me suckle my child or whatever, right? How is he supposed to read your mind? So I just think stuff like that, very disingenuous. Again, if he's presenting the truth, which I think he is, not that everything he's claiming, I should say, I think in his lawsuit is the truth. But to me, the really damaging inconsistencies and allegations to the nature that I've just discussed, and there are more of them, they seem credible, and to me, they just really call Blake Lively's entire set of claims into question. Blake Lively, in her complaint, she depicts Baldoni and the producers of the set and Wayfarer as being initially really like complacent and dismissive of things like intimacy coordinators, and having this sort of, I don't need any of that HR bullshit, this kind of attitude, and I do what I want, and we're just going to do things on the fly and whatever. She presents that in her complaint, whereas Baldoni has presented text indicating that there were times in which Blake Lively refused to go to meetings with the intimacy coordinator that Baldoni attended, in which Baldoni wanted the two of them, with the coordinator, all of them, to figure out what they were going to be doing in these scenes. And she was like, no, I'm fine. I don't want to. And let me just say this, there are a lot of obligations that actors who are big movie star status or who are spoiled opt out of because they just don't want to do it or think that it doesn't apply to them. And they may be right in those instances. But you also find that with a number of these types of personalities, they don't think that they should have to do like the down and dirty work, no pun intended, but the really hard work of like hashing things out with an intimacy coordinator or what have you, or dealing with this director Baldoni that she may not like or already has an attitude about or whatever. But like the attitude that comes across with her is very like, Baldoni is wanting to get engaged and wanting to plan this stuff out and whatever. And she, at least in the text that he has selectively presented, again, she comes across as a completely different person. Now, am I saying that that's who she really is? The truth in a number of ways is probably in the middle. But this is what I meant when I said earlier that she had put herself in the position of the aggressor, because now she cannot complain about whatever is said about her or about the allegations, or as she might think, attacks that Baldoni and Wayfarer and Jamie Heath are making against her. She has no ground upon which to complain about that because she initiated this. And I know that Blake Lively would have the public believe that she was the victim first of a smear campaign by Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer and Jamie Heath and their PR people. But I'm telling you that that's just not the case. And not only have they gone on record, whatever that's worth saying that, but they have supplied real-time text exchanges and conversations now indicating that. And I just don't believe, my experience of seeing this stuff play out for years and years, that crisis PR agents, even great ones, have the ability to create from whole cloth the kind of widespread and organic distaste for Blake Lively that was occurring on social media several months ago, as you know, which again, I don't and didn't support. But Blake Lively picked the wrong target, and she took the wrong course of action, and she made herself the aggressor. And now he's going to fight back, and he's going to be, I don't care if people don't like his shtick or his feminist bullshit or the fact that he did that 30-minute proposal video to his wife, put it on YouTube and stuff. Like, I get it. I understand that it seems narcissistic, it's annoying, what have you. But again, just because someone is not a perfect guy or he annoys some people doesn't mean that he deserves to have his entire life's work and decades of work and blood, sweat, and tears and all of that he's poured into this career, just have it stopped because an egotistical, overly sensitive actress was not able to deal with some of the more difficult adult dynamics on set. And I'm not even talking about sex there. I'm talking about, egos, clashing creative visions, and so forth. So I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right.